Welcome to the Personal Development Mastery Podcast. Stand out, don't fit in. This is the second part of the interview with Jamie Keeling and Kevin Benison. You can listen to the previous part in episode 25. Shall we talk about public speaking then, since we are already in the topic of speaking? So both of you are charismatic speakers. I've heard you both talk, and with the speaking, I want to ask, what do you think it's that it gives you, and why do you think people avoid it? Just general question, but I'm sure we're going to delve into other things just by this is just a trigger. It's not the end point of the question.
Well, it's the same reason I got my own podcast, Aggie. I clearly just love the sound of my own voice.
Goodbye, Jimmy. Not the sound of my voice, the sound of yours. Because I'm free to do whatever I want.
Nicely saved there, Benison.
Not listen to what that would just be fucking weird and almost guaranteed narcissistic, you know. If there's narcissistic elements of my personality, but you know, I'm not going to like put myself out there as being an out and out narcissist by saying that I listen to myself laughing at night. No, I like the sound of your voice, Jamie, and I listen to that late at night. Yeah.
And I know that's true because I see who's listening to my podcast and when, and you should see Kevin between like 11 and 1 in the morning. He's all over that stuff.
I struggle to get myself to sleep at the times that
I remember Kevin at some point, he was reading at his social media, he was reading the Millionaire booklet, Grant Cardone. And I remember because I had the audiobook. It's a very short audiobook, and it was Grant Cardone narrating it, and it was a very, you know, American accent. And then I had Kevin saying the same chapters, reading them, and it was such a different experience.
Mystic Scottish drawl.
Very different.
Yeah.
So, Kevin,
on the public. Sorry, were you ready to move on?
No, carry on.
I was just going to say about public speaking.
Yeah.
So, a two-sided question. What do you get out of it, and why do you think some people are afraid of it? So what I get out of it is I like contributing. I also have come to accept that one of my highest values is connection. Mm-hmm. It took me a while to get there. I think other people spotted that before I did. Without going into the backstory, it's because it lacked in my life during my upbringing and indeed during long-term relationship. And now that's one of my highest values, probably the highest value is connection. And I feel a sense of connection with the audience. And I deliver training. I've been delivering training since 2010. So I've been speaking to people in some manner or the other since 2010, and even maybe in some forms before that. But there's a flow, there's a connection with the audience when you are sending out information, and what you get back is an air of acknowledgement or an air of philosophy where people are considering it, and you feel that, and you're joined in something at that moment. You're just putting things forward for people to deal with in the way that they want to deal with, and you allow them to do that. There's no rules. And on the other hand, why I think people are so afraid of it is because to be effective in either delivering training or public speaking, it must become about the people that you're speaking to, much more than you. Yes, you have to equip yourself. It's better if you equip yourself in the way that you can make it as an enjoyable experience as possible. You're there to educate, inform, entertain. And the more you equip yourself to be able to do that, the better experience they're going to get. So if you focus more on enhancing the experience for them, you are not enhancing the experience by being nervy and thinking whether you're going to mess up or stutter or any of these things, because you probably are going to do that, because that's just what we do as human beings. You can't make it. Well, Jamie was talking about perfection. I used to be a perfectionist. You can't give the perfect talk. You can't deliver training perfectly. You can just show up in a way that gives it to them in the best way, that sets up as well as possible for them. And the more you focus on like thinking about how it can be best for them, what they need out of it, how they'll best understand it, the more it removes from your own fears of what do I look like, what are people going to think of me? Because we've heard this many times before. People are more concerned about what they're getting out of it than how you are. So the more you set it up so that they'll get maximum out of it, they're too busy caught up in what it means to them rather than thinking about you. Don't make it about you and make your delivery so much that you're caught up in that and now the focus is on you. Put the focus on them. The content is theirs. They can take it. They can process it. If your content is well enough delivered and you work on that, they ain't interested in you anymore.
You're spot on there. And so the first speaking gig I ever had was at a university up in Scotland. And it was through my business at the time, my family's business. And we went up there and we were speaking. I think I was one of 4 speakers and I was the last on. I like to say I was the headliner. But it was to a university crowd. And I was absolutely bricking it. And for exactly the reason that Kevin mentioned there was because I was totally focused on me. What if I screw up? What if my trousers fall down to my ankles while I'm talking? Or what if they think I'm stupid? Or what if they don't resonate with what I'm saying? Connection is a big thing for me as well. And the thing that turned it around for me, like when I eventually got onto stage, I was raring to go. And the reason is this: I watched the other speakers, and one of them was stood at the lectern reading from their piece of paper, stood completely still reading from the piece of paper. It was like paragraphs and paragraphs, like verbatim for this piece.
In true university style. Yeah.
It was, yeah. Another guy was so dry, it was unreal. And the other guy was one of the more interesting ones. He was talking about Abbey Road Studios. But again, it was kind of facts and figures, and it was bum. It was very, very mundane. Anyway, the lectern speakers, we just stood in front of the lectern. I was just watching them. I was watching the crowd falling asleep, and I was just like, man, this is awful. This is just like they're killing the crowd. They're literally falling asleep in their seats. And my whole focus switched from being nervous about what I was about to go on stage and do to I just need to make this. I got to reinvigorate this crowd, because otherwise, they're all going to be asleep. They're going to be listening to me anyway, so I've got nothing to worry about. I just got to get up there and just, because I didn't have any notes at all. I had no paper. I just had slides with my slides weren't. There's no text on my slides. They were just image, and they were going to guide the kind of content that I was going to be delivering.
Yeah. And
I just got up there and I was so focused on the audience and how I was going to make this an invigorating and electrifying experience for them, and how I was really going to add some value and help to inspire them, that not all, but a lot of that fear, that self-conscious fear about, what happens about, if I, it just went away. And that's been the style that I've adopted when I've spoken ever since. And I've had people several times on a lot of speaking gigs now. I've had people a lot of times say to me, like, one guy was like, the most impressive thing about your talk, he said, was that you did the first 40 minutes with 0 slides. And he's like, I've never seen that before. That was crazy. So I'm very much a free-flowing speaker. I like to just kind of just go with the flow. But to answer your question, what do I get out of it? A lot of the same things as Kevin. I love the connection with the audience. I love to teach, and I'm a performer at heart. before I got into business and all this crazy stuff, I was a musician. Like, I dropped out of college at 17 to go and be a rock star. I was like, right, I'm going to work full time at Pizza Hut whilst I work on being a rock star. And like, we were doing 3-4 gigs a week. We were traveling all over the country, playing up and down the country, even did some stuff over in Europe, and we were recording all our own music. And of course, it helped that the family business was like designing and building recording studios and had access to all of that gear and equipment and knowledge. So I loved that. There was, for me, I think, look back to that now and I miss it, because being up on stage, and because there was 4 of us as well, so like we were on stage together, and it was like this out of body experience when we did the good gigs and we were playing really well. It wasn't like we were up there playing music. It was like we were channeling that shit, and the music was just flowing through us, and I almost just got lost in the energy of it, man, and just felt so connected to what I was doing, and so connected to the audience and to the other people on stage. It was an amazing, magical feeling. It was a true flow state, and it just felt great. So for me, I get that out of speaking as well, and having the opportunity to stand up on stage and really connect with an audience. And in case you hadn't noticed, I'm quite opinionated, and I like to tell it as it is, or rather as I see it, and I'm quite blunt. And I think it's important, because there's a lot of fluff out there, and there's a lot of airy-fairy ideas and very surface level stuff, but I like to cut to the quick when I talk. What do I get out of it? Honestly, the main reason I started doing public speaking was because I wanted to increase my visibility, get my name out there, and get more business for my business. I wanted to find business clients to go and work with so I could grow my business. So that was kind of the main driver for me. It was a way to publicize myself. But the more and more I've done it, like I've never been paid to speak. I travel up and down the country to do it. I love it. It's great, to stand up on stage, and then the conversations that come afterwards as well. It's great when you can feel like you've really connected with an audience and you've shared something on stage that people have resonated with, and to the point where they come up and talk to you afterwards about it and share their experiences around those subjects and topics. And it just feels great. If there's one thing out of all the shit that I've been through in my life, and all the things I've done and haven't done and failed and fucked up, if there's just one thing that I can share publicly like that with someone, whether it's in a podcast like this, or whether it's on stage, or whether it's in a one-to-one conversation, that other person or those other people can take away from that, and it changes for the better just one small bit of their life, that feels great to me. That's, I suppose, not only fulfilling my need for connection, but for contribution as well. I feel like I'm making a difference for people, and I love that. Why do people shy away from it? A lot of people are very self-focused. I'm just going to echo a lot of what Kevin said, really, because he's absolutely spot on. A lot of people are very self-focused. They're very, very much worried about how they're going to look or how it's going to reflect on them, and less focused on the connection and the contribution aspect of it. I think the contribution part of it is a big thing. But again,
let me ask you, because you both mentioned the connection and the contribution, which, of course, I agree. But what about significance? Don't you think that being at the front, speaking to people, gives you this kind of significance that maybe contradicts a little bit the contribution, because you get something for yourself?
Yeah, in a way. And when I was playing in a band and I was up on stage as a musician, absolutely. Like, my life before 2017, that was one of the big realizations for me at UPW, coming back to Tony Robbins, was I was totally significance driven. That was my number one core value, was significance. So that was really revealing for me. And certainly when I was playing in a band, it was like a lot of it was about significance. I was the front man. I was the guy with the mic, I had my guitar, I had the mic, and I was the fucking man. And I love that, because I was significant as fuck, even if it was just the barmaid in the audience watching.
By the way, all these bleeps are just my bad wind.
But not. I mean, I'm sure there's a small part of significance still there, but definitely for me, having been on the other side and having been on stage and it being so much about significance, definitely being on stage for me now, doing the public speaking, doing the podcast is way, way, way more about the connection and contribution than it is about significance.
Aye. Interesting. And I go back to UPW 2017 on that. And you do make a good point, Aggie, and it's interesting because many people will say, and Jamie said it himself, that if you talk, you like the sound of your own voice. Actually, I do like the sound of my own voice, and many others do too. But when we were at UPW 2017, now Jamie likes significance, so he bought Diamond Schmeiman or whatever the flipping is. So he was up there somewhere, and I was in the cheap seats. But managed to run in the room quick and got some of the better cheap seats. But anyway, as you know, Aggie, Tony Robbins runs through his view of the human needs. Mm-hmm. And significance gets a bad rap. But I've said to many people, how about that when people are seeking significance, rather than attaching some stigma to it, would just accept and understand that maybe they've not had a lot of significance in their life, and that's why they crave it so much. However, when I was sitting looking at the needs, it just came to me all of a sudden, whoa. And this was somebody that I myself kind of considered that certainty and significance were my two highest needs at the time. I thought, if you can switch it to contribution, all the other needs are met. The connection, even connection, a consequence of that, or a byproduct, a subproduct of that, is significance. If you're getting connection with somebody, it's because they see something in you. It's just, if you're going striving purely for significance, and let's not make it a bad thing, you're striving purely for significance, then you're willing to take that without giving anything. Mm-hmm. It's just that you can't truly get significance without giving. So if you can go to connection, all of a sudden there must be something going on that's reciprocal. You're maybe giving something different. You're getting connection in some way. There is, even with you may get connection. I think you can get connection through things that are non-human. You know, I get connection with the land when I'm on the mountains. I get connection with music, but I also love it. And I've said this to many friends, that let's lie and just listen to music together, because I feel that there's enormous amount of connection in that. So some significance comes from connection, but really, to get to my point, when you go for contribution, all the other needs are met. Now, I'm not going to explain this, but if you start giving to people, very briefly, you give to people, you're going to get connection because they're going to want to spend more time with you if you give to them. If you give to people, you're going to get some level of significance and recognition, mm-hmm. because they will see you as the person that is giving to them. If you contribute, you will get uncertainty because you never truly know how people are going to respond, and you must be open to the variety of responses that come through contribute. You can't put expectation on it. Otherwise, possibly, it's not for contribution, it's for something else. Mm. You will get a level of certainty because the more you contribute, the more you will start to see trends in the results, the consequences of that contribution. So you can start hedging your bets, if you like, or you can start, no, that's not the right saying, but you can start kind of getting a bit more consistency in the outcome of that as well. So, and of course, to contribute, you must grow. So I just thought, the more you can start like bringing contribution up your hierarchy of needs, the more the others are going to be met as a byproduct of that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that was totally me as well in terms of significance. I know where that came from, and it's only something that I've recently dealt with. My parents, business owners all their lives, as long as I can remember. I was a part of the family business way before I ever joined in any official capacity. And the thing with that was that it meant that they weren't around as much as I would have liked, and I didn't have that significance with them, and that was a big deal for me. Which is why I mentioned about my son before, and how I was going down that same path. And I get it. My dad, he was working hard. He was working hard to keep a roof over our heads. He was putting food on the table, and it was fucking hard. There were times when we were driving to school with fumes of petrol in the car and not sure, kind of were bankrupt once and lost everything. And, they've been through the mill. So I get where they were coming from. But there's no questioning how that affected me and where it put my focus. And it was why I was a high achiever at school. It was why I went so hard after the medals in Taekwondo. I was striving for significance. It was my sole focus, and it was detrimental purely because it was the number one core driver, and I was willing, therefore, to sacrifice other things in order to get that significance, other things like contribution, like connection, and the effect that had on my relationships throughout my life and my results is self-evident.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, get it. And when I said the significance, when I added it to the connection and contribution, I didn't mean to put it against those other things. I was just putting it in addition to other things. And obviously the variety and the uncertainty, I think it's a given. When you give a speech, you have no idea how it's going to turn up. So there is this kind of uncertainty, that variety, and growth, of course. So yeah, it's just
absolutely. It's just essentially in reality, it's just I've sussed out. It's just a way of, how do I disguise this egotistical, narcissistic maniac? What can I do so that's hidden a little bit?
Let's talk about something different, because it is something that I think inevitably in the times that we live, I would like a comment from both of you, and that's the coronavirus situation, what's going on with the major disruption in our life. So what are your thoughts?
Can I just make a point?
5G. It's 5G. They're going to kill us. It's activating viruses in our cells, and the government's trying to wipe us out.
Anyway, before we touch on that wonderful, can I just make a point? Sorry, because
sure.
There's something that, as Jamie has touched on in what he's been saying, and we've not really said much useful so far. We've not really said anything that anybody can actually take away. So I'd like to give them something that actually...
Sure.
But there's a couple of times, and I noticed Jamie corrected himself on something that he said, and it was something that he touched on at the start of the conversation. And this was, we had just a little WhatsApp conversation the other day, which was as a result of me being in psychoanalytical mode, from a conversation that I heard Jamie having with someone else. And I'd noticed that this person, and many people will say, I say it like it is. And they said that I'm just honest. And other people will say, yeah, you say it like it is, and you're just honest. And I noticed that Jamie actually corrected himself on this. And it was as a result, perhaps, of the conversation we had. And just bringing awareness to these things, it's very good to be very aware of the language that you use and actually the real truth behind it. But I said, maybe it might be more accurate, rather than people saying that they say it like it is. It's perhaps more accurate that you are saying it as you see it. not as it is. The only reality that we have is our perception. And this is what self-awareness does. It helps us to maybe see the territory a bit clearer rather than the map we create in our mind. Saying it as we see it is more that we are like verbalizing the map we have rather than trying to portray that we are seeing the territory. None of us, I don't think, truly see the territory. We just have the map, which is our view of the world. And rather than saying, I'm just honest, you can say, I am willing to express my opinions. And that rather than, because people, oh yeah, I'm just honest. I'm willing to express my opinions. It doesn't mean that it's honest. It doesn't mean that it's true, but it's true to me. And I'm saying it as I see it in alignment with my map, my view of the world. So, yeah, it was interesting that Jamie's touched on that a couple of times. And I think it can help in a level of self-awareness when actually you check yourself and you go, I'm going to say this, but it's just as I see it. It isn't necessarily actually as it is. Like 5D.
And to build on that as well, something that I've been noticing recently, I'm doing a lot more of, is I'm noticing when I'm talking, when I'm saying things that are not true to who I actually am, and I'm recognizing when it's my ego talking, when I'm saying things that perhaps are somebody else's opinions or something else that isn't really a part of my belief system, but that I've heard somewhere and that I'm repeating or regurgitating as if it's my own. And I think we have a tendency, all of us, to do that a lot. And I've heard people talk about this awareness about this thing as well. And it's only really, maybe the past 3 to 6 months when I've really started to become more aware that I'm doing this in conversation. And it's taken a few months, even after being aware of it, to get to the point where I can actually recognize and stop and kind of correct and go back and say, be more true to who I am. But I think it's a really great thing if you can get to the point where you start to recognize the difference between your true self saying it as you see it and saying it as it is. I think the distinction between those two things is a great analogy for either your ego talking or your true self talking about something.
It's the difference potentially between your pragmatism and delusion.
Again, put way more succinctly than me.
It's lovely. And you know what I think?
I love it. Yeah, no, it's.
Well, you were saying that there, I just thought this conversation, there has been the majority of it, apart from where I've let the team down, is that there has been one person speaking. We haven't felt the need to jump in, interject, correct, put our opinions across in the middle of somebody talking. And I think that gives huge credit to where 2 out of 3 of us are pretty exceptional communicators, and one is kind of still learning not to jump in,
We'll let the audience make their own mind up.
Where people are jumping in left, right, and centre, and you think, let the person finish. Let them finish.
Yeah, I've been in board meetings and certain team meetings where that's a big problem, and certain people just can't let. And you just think, fucking hell, just let the guy finish, man. Like in the middle of talking, just shut the fuck up. Let him say what he's got to say, and then you can consider and respond.
When it goes off the subject, of course, if it goes off topic, then you can't say, look, I appreciate where you're going with this, but we just need to be mindful of time and keep it to point,
That's something that personally I've improved much or cultivated since I started interviewing people for the podcast, because there's not much point, as far as I can, from my point of view, to interrupt them and speak what I have to say, because the interview is about their point of view, not my point of view. I could just do a solo podcast and speak out for an hour what are my opinions. So by listening to people when I ask them the questions, it has really helped me improve with that. And there's not point to interrupt most of the time anyway.
But you have to be a leader at the same time, I can totally relate to that in my podcast. In the early days, I would let, if someone was talking, especially with it being, I know you do a lot of yours on in person as well. When I came down and did your podcast, we were there in person, and it's a different dynamic. It's different when you're on Zoom or Facebook or whatever. But I was in the early days very guilty of just letting people talk, and then when there was kind of stop and they were done, but I'd let them waffle unnecessarily sometimes. So I think it is important, and much like the example that Kevin gave there about being in a team meeting or a board meeting. Sometimes you do need to be able to respectfully halt the path of the conversation if it's going off topic or away from where it needs to be focused, and just steer the rudder, get it back on track.
And interestingly as well, like Aggie, it's letting people run, because if we look at the opposite ends of most people, when they're going to say something, they have something that they want to say. Sometimes they're not clear initially on what that is. But some people, if you look at the opposite ends of the continuum, you'll get people who start with the point and people that finish with the point. And then all those in between. And the people that start with the point, they'll just go straight into it and say, let's just say, personal development isn't effective. Something like that. They've started with the point. That's the point they wanted to make. They've got not going to add anything on, and you would need to question them to get some meat on the bone to that. They're just going to go, that's my opinion. That's the point they're making, straight on it. Whereas others, they'll go round in circles. I'm not talking about anybody in particular, and they go off on a tangents. But somewhere in their mind, they know when the loop has got to be closed or the loop hasn't been closed, and then they'll eventually get to the point. And actually, sometimes if you stop them, all of what they said was pointless because they didn't finish.
It would help bring it to a natural conclusion as well. In that case, sometimes that process, like you kind of can feel what the point is that you're trying to make, but it's still forming inside of you. And that kind of, that's why having a conversation or working with a coach or just having someone who you can have an honest, real conversation with, it can really help to clarify the issues that you're dealing with, or the things that you're mulling over in your mind at any given period. And it just helps you when you talk it through, when you're getting it out of your head. And it might sound like this big jumbled mess, but eventually you come to the point that you had to go through that process of getting all that shit out onto the table, and perhaps having somebody to bounce off to reflect it back at you, for you to see it in a different light, to get to a level of understanding where you can move forward with it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm a bit hesitant now to come back to what I started asking earlier about the current situation, but I'd still like a brief comment. Obviously, of course, it is the 5G, but apart from that, I mean, what are your thoughts in general, the situation? Because it is something that hasn't happened before in our lifetime. So
reptiles have infiltrated our leadership. China is out to kill us all. And did I mention 5G?
Yes. What about you, Kevin?
Sorry. Are we carrying on the humour theme, or?
I was being deadly serious, Kevin. How dare you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of shit going around.
You can say that again.
A fair portion of it landed in my inbox, and I thought I'd like to think respectfully put a stop to some of it, and indeed shared in some groups. And I think this, okay, so for me, it's been a tough time so far in some ways for me, but initially from the start, I recognised this as an opportunity for personal growth. And in any personal growth, it's going to be tough, it's going to be raw, it's going to be vulnerable. We have enough to worry about within ourselves, and we have enough to focus on of improving on how we personally deal with the things that life throws at us without worrying about things that are out there that we cannot deal with and we cannot control. As Stephen Covey put it in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he spoke in there about the circle of influence and the circle of concern. All this 5G stuff, whether a country has started a biological war, whatever it is all in the circle of concern. There's nothing we can do about it. What we can do is work on how we adapt best to situations that are totally alien to us, that have been stuck indoors. And you guys know that I spend a lot of time on the mountains. Jamie sometimes comes and admires my arse when we do that occasionally as well. Outdoors, I spend a lot of time going and having conversations, buzzing around, meeting new people, presenting content, generating ideas and all this stuff, and then all of a sudden, boom, I'm stuck indoors. But immediately I thought, I must use this time to grow personally and adapt my routines, my patterns, and the way I think to deal with this situation, even to prove to myself that I can have the ability to adapt. And, you know, one of the things that I've been talking about recently is challenging your identity. And I'm due to do a TEDx talk on that, which I was going to be doing this month, but that's obviously been postponed, about challenging your identity. Well, we're always forming identities. As soon as you get rid of one, you'll start forming another one. And unless you catch that, you'll begin to reinforce it. So I was reinforcing this being dynamic, being able to adapt to situations and generating ideas, living in the moment, communicating. And all of a sudden, like I talk about, with the problem with your identity is it could be that you've enforced it and lived within it so much that when life, as Rocky Balboa brilliantly put it, life will beat you to your knees and keep you there if you let it. It's not about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. We've all been hit hard here. How can you adapt to keep moving forward?
I think I'll just echo pretty much what Kevin said there. In all seriousness, when it comes to all this shit that's flying around about 5G, whether coronavirus was man-made or if the government set it upon us and all this other shit. Look, I mentioned before that I'd been down a few rabbit holes in my time, and
can't be man-made because the stats apparently that I saw are that more men are dying from this. So it may be woman-made.
The point I was making is I've researched aliens, I've researched reptiles in government and all that David Icke shit. And you know, I said about being at a particularly negative and low point in my life. The reason for that was that all I was looking at was all of this negativity and all of this shit. And this is fucking important for people who are listening. Like, if I don't know what the answer is around 5G, like I'm not stupid, but I'm not a world-class physicist either. But I understand enough behind the physics and the science that I'm a bit like, well, nah, I don't know. But then there's some doctors and scientists who put their name to some petitions, which is interesting. I'm not going to sit here and say I know the answer one way or the other. Do I think it caused coronavirus? No, I don't. I think that's ridiculous. The same way I think that flat earthers are fucking ridiculous. That's one thing that, like, you just cannot, like, we live on a round ball in space. Everything else in space is fucking round. Anyway, I'm not going to get on my soapbox for that one. But flat earthers in particular really do my fucking nutting. But at the end of the day, like, I've been down the rabbit holes with all this stuff. It made me extremely negative because it's all negative stuff. Like, you don't go down positive rabbit holes, generally speaking. And the effect for me on my life was that everything I saw was negative. My whole outlook on the world and life was, I stopped being able to see all the beautiful things in my life, all the beautiful things, all the beautiful people in the world as a result of this swamp of negativity that I was focused on. Something Tony said, you know, where your focus goes, energy flows and results show. And that's right. That's so right. I've lived that. So all those people out there right now who are going on about, you know, coronavirus was man-made and 5G and aliens taking over the planet and all this stuff. So fucking what? If they are, great. You know, when you can do something about it, then let's have a conversation. But right now, I can't affect, personally, I have no control over the rollout of 5G. I have no control over coronavirus. I have no control over whether or not the government has locked down the entire country. It's 3 billion people worldwide right now who are locked down or severely restricted from their normal daily lives. It is what it is. Like, get over it, get on with it, and focus on what you can control. You know, how resilient can you be? How hard can you get hit, as Kevin so eloquently put it, and get back up and keep moving forwards? That's what this is really all about. You know, all of this other stuff is just a distraction. Look, when it comes to the point when the government is militarized and there's tanks on the fucking streets and they're all telling us, you know, that we live in this dictatorship and there's a revolution and there's revolutionary armies rising up and making the citizens or calling the citizens to bear arms and go and fight the government, give me a call. I've got a shotgun. I'll be there with you and we'll fight for the fucking revolution. Right now, we're not there. We're nowhere near there. Just, Christ, man, just get on with your lives. Like, all of that stuff you have no control over. It is not worth allowing yourself to get sucked into a pit of negative shit because of a bunch of stuff that you're reading on Facebook.
Is your neck a bit red there?
Can you see the vein? The angry vein?
No, talking about the shotgun comment.
Well, before I became a vegetarian, I used to hunt and eat my own meat, which is another thing that drives me nuts. There's a lot of meat eaters out there you talk to are like, okay, so if I give you a shotgun and tell you to go and shoot a cow, skin the fucker, gut it, chop the meat off its bones, would you? Oh no, I couldn't possibly do that. Oh my God, that's disgusting. So disconnected. That, you know, on a serious note, we are as a society so disconnected from our food, from our sources of food. And that was a big part of that for me, was I wanted to go out and hunt, and I've shot. You remember when Walker's released the Cajun squirrel crisps? I was like, right, I'm going to try this shit and see if these crisps actually taste like Cajun squirrel. So I went out, shot with some squirrels, sprinkled some Cajun on their asses, and it tasted nothing like the crisps. I have to admit, it was very disappointing. But on a serious note, what I got out of that was I have been out, hunted, skinned, gutted, prepared, cooked, and eaten my meat. So when people talk to me about my decision to be vegetarian or pescatarian, I come from a very informed background on that. You know, I'm very connected to my food, and my reasons for being vegetarian are not really moralistic at all, because at the end of the day, vegetarians kill fuckloads of animals as well. You know, when you're harvesting crops out of fields, just think of all the mice, rats, insects, and all the other creatures that you're murdering in the process. We just don't value those animals because they're smaller. We've got this weird thing where we're disproportionately biased towards caring for things that are bigger and not giving a shit about cockroaches and flies and mosquitoes.
You made going on the pool sound so primal there.
On the pool?
Yeah. That you'd gone out, hunted your meat, and you'd done this and that and that. And finally ate it.
I was primal. Proper primal. I'm a bit of a pussy now, but yeah, I was proper primal back then. You should have seen me, mate. Fucking shoe polish all over my face, shotgun over my arm, beating my chest like an orangutan.
There's a quote from Young Guns, the movie Young Guns. You seen Young Guns?
No.
Nah, that was an amazing movie back in the day. That was back in the day of RoboCop as well, around that time. But
I remember RoboCop. Yeah.
There's a great quote from that that you remind me of there. He's just going, "Shit, I've found something. Horse shit." That's it.
Comes back to what we were talking about before about exploring those identities.
Yeah. And it's great how you said earlier. It's just absolutely wonderful about how you said that you didn't really get much out of personal development, but yet you just like used one of the like headline quotes from Tony Robbins in there.
Did I mention I'm a hypocrite as well?
Nobody was saying that.
I think you were referring more to the event, the UPW, rather than personal development as a whole. That was my understanding. In Jamie's defense,
Absolutely slating personal development mastery podcast, everything, all of it. It's just like he was just booting it.
I loved very much. I got something tremendously important with what we were discussing about what's happening and all the theories. And, for me, there is only one thing that I don't like, and it raises some red flags, is why they decide to censor these comments. I mean, for me it's wrong. They should be able to express it. If they think that there is a global conspiracy from aliens, why censor it? Just let it be, because people would judge for themselves, or they would say this is utter bullshit or not. But anyway, what you both said about the circle of influence, what we can really do something about, and what is completely out of our power and drives us into a rabbit hole of negativity, and because there's nothing positive there. If we're indeed leading into a dystopian society of the Big Brother ruling all of us, then I mean, at some point, if we are required to have the number of the beast tattooed on our forehead or some modern version of that, then I think at that point it will be the time to meet Jamie and his shotgun and go underground or something. And
Well, look, I have to be clear as well. You've got to be aware of all this stuff, like. But don't let it fuck too much with your, don't let it occupy too much of your headspace. Because there is, look, if you were going to take over the world or take over a country in that dystopian fashion, and you were going to strip away civil liberties, this is one of the ways you would do it. Mm-hmm. Right? Let's be clear. This is a great opportunity, if the government wanted to completely strip away our rights and civil liberties. So and it's happened before. So it's something to be concerned about. But as Kevin said, that's in the circle of concern. At the moment, you don't have any control over it. So be aware of it, but keep it over there. Keep it at arm's length. Yeah. Be aware of it, though, because if it does get to a point where it's like, shit, this is really going south, then you need to make decisions around how you respond to that. What you make decisions around what is in your circle of control. Okay, right, do you know what? I'm going to pick up my family and I'm going to move to another country where this isn't happening, or I'm going to go underground and join the revolution, and I'm going to start blowing up houses of parliament or whatever it is. And this podcast has now been flagged on MI5, MI6, CIA. You are fucked, son. But
Quite simple.
I suppose you refer to the famous movie Vendetta, V for Vendetta. Anyway, it was just a movie reference, nothing more.
Nicely saved, Aggie.
Quite simply, a group in fear requires lower quality leadership than an empowered group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's a simple one. Hold on, I went for a minute there. My battery thing came up. It said 10% battery left. That's what it is. Looking too much.
Okay, maybe that's a subtle sign that maybe we should start wrapping things up.
Now, that was the government infiltrating our devices. Now they're now listening. They're going to take you down, Aggie.
Oh my.
I'm not going to say what I'm going to hear and how they respond to it and start listening to my devices.
Give us a quick comment about people that want to connect with you. I mean, if they want to connect with you after everything that's been said, but let's say that someone does, where would you direct them?
I think that's a stretch after some of the stuff we discussed in this podcast.
Oh, you never know. You never know. You two guys inspired me, so it's you never know who's going to be inspired by this.
So let me ask you a question. After this conversation, do we still inspire you?
Absolutely. Yeah, even more. I mean it. Look, a joke, having a sense of humor is essential, and being able to see the light side of things, rather than those people that you said that were in front of the lectern and reading. Yeah, what's the point in that? You have to.
Jamie's more channels to be found on, so yeah, you can find me on Bumble, Twitter, Tinder, and also a free profile on Elite Singles. Within the location, you'll need to come within 20 miles. Which is unnecessary travel at the moment. You can't connect.
But Bumble and Tinder even still operational?
Not sure.
Oh, brilliant. You won't find me on Tinder or Bumble. If you want to connect with me, I'm fucking about on TikTok right now. If you want to go and see some more shit like this on there, then you can connect at Jamie P. Keeling, Keeling. Other than that, I've got my own app, so check out Bulletproof. You can get that on the App Store and the Google Play Store. It's mainly focused towards business owners, so if you've got a business and you sat at home doing fuck all because you're locked down right now, then jump on the app and have a look around, because all my podcasts are on there. You can message me direct on there, and there's loads of other cool stuff on there as well. And of course, I'm on Facebook talking about 5G and dissing flat earthers. And generally speaking, you can find me at the Jamie Keeling on Instagram, although I don't really mess around too much on there. Facebook and LinkedIn if you want the more professional Jamie Keeling with the more professional touch.
Actually, you can find me on LinkedIn. So I do have a LinkedIn profile. I don't think there is a professional version of me, but I do try and pretend. So there's LinkedIn, there's Facebook, and you can connect with me or send me a friend request by all means, and I'll go through my very high-level algorithms as to whether I accept a friend request or not, you know. And there is also kevinbenison.com, which is my website, and there's a couple of interesting but outdated opinions on there, because I've not been on there for some time. But yes, I do a bit of public speaking here and there. I've not done a Facebook Live for a while. Yeah, I've done one in my group. I've got a big group on Facebook. Yeah, I do a bit of public speaking, and I will be continuing with that in time to come. You know, look out TEDx Malvern 2020 website is there about me speaking there. So look out for that in time to come, you know, when we actually get round to doing that, where that will be added to the TEDx website as well. But it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
It's been a real pleasure to have you both, and as I told you before we started recording, there was a point that I think it was when you were doing that podcast in front of the piano with drinking just before, in December or something like that. That I watched a little bit of it. I have to admit I couldn't bear watch all of it, but the little bit that I watched, it was enough to give me the inspiration that, wow, okay, let's do this kind of an interview, a different one with three people. So I'm delighted and privileged to to have spoken with both of you simultaneously, and I think it was a fascinating conversation. So I really appreciate you both, and thank you very much.
That podcast you made reference to there, Aggie, is what's technically known as a career-ending podcast. That was on my birthday on the 21st, and I think we did it on my birthday, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
We were getting funneled with, I think did we have some champagne or some, we had alcohol. We had quite a significant amount of alcohol.
I was very drunk.
It was an interesting show.
Yeah. Thanks, Aggie, and thanks, Jamie. It really has been a great conversation, and it's taken me a lot to really become much more authentic and true in the way that I show up. I've worked massively on that, and I'm very proud that I've been able to, and pleased that I've been able to be authentic and just pretty light and playful in this. So it really says a lot about you guys. So thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. Aggie, thanks so much for inviting me on today. And Kevin, it's always a pleasure, mate.
Thank you very much. Wish you all the best, guys. And authentic is, I think it's the word, the key word.
Be real, folks.
Yeah. Thanks, Aggie. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening. Please take a moment to subscribe, rate and review Personal Development Mastery on Apple Podcasts. If you want to know more about me and how I can help you, join my Facebook group Personal Development Mastery. You can either search for it on Facebook or you can simply type bit.ly/PDM group. And until next time, stand out, don't fit in.